Good morning, students. After dealing with papilledema, now today we are going to see another common inflammatory condition of optic nerve, that is optic neuritis. As we have discussed in papilledema, papilledema was non-inflammatory edema, whereas now optic neuritis, as the name suggests, is the inflammation of the optic nerve head. What is definition and classification? Optic neuritis, as the name suggests, is the inflammation of the optic nerve as suggested by the TIS of appendicitis. Like that, optic neuritis, inflammation of the optic nerve. Now, how to classify the optic neuritis? Now, depending upon the ophthalmoscopic appearance, fundoscopically how optic nerve looks like, the optic neuritis is classified if the ophthalmoscopically visible at the disc and therefore showing obvious signs of disease, it is classified into papillitis. It is characterized by hyperemia and edema of the optic disc, which may be associated with peripapillary flame-shaped hemorrhages. This is the most common type of optic neuritis seen in children. And another is neuroretinitis. It is characterized by papillitis, that is disc edema, with inflammation of the surrounding retinal nerve fiber layer and macula, causing macular star deposits. This is least common type. It is rarely a manifestation of demyelination. So I will repeat this again. Fundoscopically, how the disc looks like. Fundoscopically, how disc appears. Based on that, there is papillitis and neuroretinitis. In papillitis, only edema of the optic disc is there, hyperemia and edema, and there are peripapillary hemorrhages. This is most common type, papillitis, especially seen in children. Second variety is neuroretinitis, where there is surrounding the retinal nerve fiber layer is involved and macula shows star figure. This is least common. So this is visibly, fundoscopically visible optic neuritis, two types, papillitis, neuroretinitis. Now, inflammatory conditions which attack the nerve proximal to this region and therefore show no ophthalmic scopic changes, this we call it retrobulbar neuritis. Retrobulbar neuritis is a type of optic neuritis where the inflammation attacks proximal to lamina cribrosa. So, if we see fundoscopically, the disc appears normal. There are no changes of congestion, hyperemia or blurred margins seen with this condition. This is a third type of optic neuritis, which is known as retrobulbar neuritis. It is the most common type in adults and it is frequently associated with multiple sclerosis. So I will repeat again, fundoscopically visible papillitis when the disc is involved in front of lamina cribrosa, fundoscopically seen, edematous disc, hyperemia, peripapillary hemorrhages. Second, neuroretinitis, that is again fundoscopically visible, where disc is involved, surrounding retina is involved, macula shows star-shaped deposits, that is neuroretinitis. Third type, retrobulbar, where behind the lamina cribrosa optic nerve is inflamed, fundoscopically no changes will be seen. So disc will appear normal, but there will be neuritis. This is known as retrobulbar neuritis. So retrobulbar is frequently associated with multiple sclerosis and it is most common type in adults, whereas papillitis is most common in children and the neuroretinitis is the least common seen clinically. Most commonly is retrobulbar, then papillitis and neuroretinitis is seen least common. Now this is a fundoscopically visible changes based on that classification. Now what is other classification which is etiologically based? Etiologically based classification, most common is demyelinating diseases. The commonest example of demyelinating disease is multiple sclerosis. So when there is optic neuritis associated with multiple sclerosis, this is, we call it as a demyelinating disease. So most etiologically, most of the times, if you come across the case of optic neuritis, the most common cause is multiple sclerosis or demyelinating disease. Second etiology is para-infectious. following a viral infection or immunization. Now, what are the infectious diseases? Local infectious diseases, sinus related, sinusitis, common, especially in pediatric age group. Sinusitis leading to optic neuritis. Then there will be endophthalmitis. This is a ocular disease causing optic neuritis. Orbital cellulitis, orbital disease causing optic neuritis. Contagious spread from meninges, meningitis causing optic neuritis. Brain, that is encephalitis causing optic neuritis, or base of skull. So meningitis involving brain or base of skull causing optic neuritis. Or the infections may be systemic, but they will cause optic neuritis. What are the systemic diseases? Viral diseases like influenza, measles, mumps, chickenpox, herpes zoster, infectious mononucleosis, and cytomegalovirus. So these are systemic diseases which cause optic neuritis. Bacterial diseases, TB, syphilis, cat scratch disease, Lyme's disease. Fungal, cryptococcosis, histoplasmosis. Protozoal, toxocariasis, toxoplasmosis, malaria, pneumonia. Parasitic, cysticercosis. So these are the systemic diseases causing optic neuritis. Now there are some non-infectious diseases which also cause optic neuritis. Again, in that systemic, sarcoidosis, systemic autoimmune disease like SLE, polyarteritis nodosa, and other vasculitides. Local non-infectious diseases, uveitis and symptomatic ophthalmitis may cause optic papillitis. There are metabolic disorders which cause optic neuritis. Diabetes, most common, anemia, pregnancy, avitaminosis, starvation. These are all metabolic conditions which cause optic neuritis. One condition in which optic nerve is primarily affected without any other obvious central nerve involvement is Leber's disease. So this is etiological classification of optic neuritis. How is the clinical course of optic neuritis? In the majority of the cases, especially those with demyelinating disease, which is commonest cause of optic neuritis, vision starts to improve in the second or third week, and by 4th to 5th week visual acuity returns to normal or near normal, 618 to 612. Before that, you have to remember, patient presents with painful vision loss, painful sudden monocular vision loss. That is the most common presentation. Now then the point comes is, if the optic neuritis is because of demyelinating disease, vision starts to improve on its own in the natural course of the disease in the second or third week. This we are talking about typical optic neuritis because of demyelinating disease. So by 4th to 5th week, visual acuity returns to normal. Subsequently, vision slowly and steadily improves over several months and is ultimately restored to 6/6. Color vision, contrast sensitivity, and visual fields take longer to recover and may never return completely to normal. So here you will have to remember that it is patient presents with not only reduced central vision, color vision is affected. Dyschromatopsia, especially for red-green. Contrast sensitivity is reduced. Visual fields show central, paracentral, or centrocecal scotomas. Now these changes in the natural course take almost very long period to recover. They also recover, but they take long time as compared to the central vision loss, which generally recovers within a period of 1 year. This is typical optic neuritis when there is a associated demyelinating disease. Now atypical optic neuritis differs from this course. Atypical neuritis patient, now typical has age group between 18 to 45. Typical affects females predominantly. Atypical patients out of typical range 18 to 45. Atypical has no pain on eye movements. That pain is seen with typical optic neuritis. Then atypical of neuritis, there is poor vision persisting beyond 2 weeks. So vision doesn't improve in the natural course in case of atypical neuritis. or there is progressive diminution of vision beyond the first week. These indicate need for specific further investigation. So I will again like to tell you there is typical optic neuritis, atypical. Typical is associated with multiple sclerosis or demyelinating disease. Typical affects age group 18 to 45. Typical is having painful sudden loss of vision. Natural course vision improves. Typical also has dyschromatopsia, reduced contrast sensitivity, field defects. These changes take longer time to recover in the natural course of the disease. Atypical other than demyelinating disease if there is optic neuritis. Age group beyond 18 to 45. Pain is not there on eye movement. It is painful in typical, especially in the pain patient in the superior rectus area. Why there is pain? Because at the apex of the orbit, where there is a common tendinous ring, at that common tendinous ring, the coverings of the optic nerves are inflamed. So the pain is referred to that common tendinous ring, and because tendons are involved, movements become painful. That is when typical. Atypical has no pain eye movements, and poor vision persists beyond 2 weeks, or even diminution continues beyond first week. These show that it is atypical neuritis. Now clinical features. Unless specified otherwise, term optic neuritis implies idiopathic or demyelinating. Idiopathic is synonymous with demyelinating syndrome. What are the symptoms? Loss of vision. Typically deteriorates over hours to days and reaches a trough about 1 week after the onset. So patient monocular sudden vision loss is a presentation painful. This vision loss deteriorates, goes down and reaches a trough, lowest point about 1 week after the onset. This is predominantly. Then visual loss is subtle or profound. Sometimes there is complete blindness, sometimes there is very small loss of vision. It is usually unilateral, bilateral rarely. Age group is 18 to 45, typical. This is typical optic neuritis. It is accompanied by deep orbital, retroocular or brow pain, aggravated by eye movement and increased by pressure upon the brow. We have seen the reason why there is pain. Neuralgia and headache may be present. Tenderness of the eyeball and digital pressure. If you press the eyeball, there will be pain. It is accompanied by disturbance of other visual functions such as color vision loss, red desaturation. Remember, this is very typical of optic neuritis. Typical. You have to show 2 bottles to the patient. Bottle should have a red cap and red cap color bottle should be shown, and if patient will have to compare affected eye how the red appears and unaffected eye how the red appears. Patient will complain that affected eye will see the red in a diluted form or desaturated. This is known as red desaturation as compared to the normal eye. So, and there is a reduced perception of light intensity. What is Pulfrich phenomena? Altered perception of moving objects. Pulfrich is moving objects. The vision of the moving objects is affected. Euthopsin, after exercise or increase in body temperature, vision deteriorates. This is known as euthopsin. So these are the signs of typical optic neuritis. Retrovulvar, rapid deterioration but normal fundus. Diagnosis depends on local tenderness, pupillary reaction, which will be RAPD. So in all cases of optic neuritis, pupil will be showing RAPD defect and abnormalities in the visual fields. So normal fundus, reduced vision, RAPD defect is retrovulvar neuritis, and papillitis type picture with RAPD, reduced vision, is typical optic neuritis. Associated symptoms such as history of antecedent influenza like viral illness or focal neurological symptoms such as weakness, numbness and tingling in the extremities. Signs. Variable degree of decreased visual acuity. Variable means sometimes there will be 6-9, sometimes there will be hardly PLPR. Color vision is decreased mainly to the red and green. This is typical of optic nerve disease. contrast sensitivity will be abnormal. You know, there is a one more parameter of vision apart from central vision is contrast. How you recognize the contrast? That contrast sensitivity goes down in optic neuritis. Stereo acuity again goes down. There will be field effects: central, centrocecal, arcuate, sectorial, altitudinal, focal. These are all suggestive of optic neuritis. Perimetry shows visual function depression over the entire field, was more marked in the central 20° with varied patterns of field effects. Lack of sustained contraction constriction of the pupil to light or presence of relative afferent pupillary defect or Marcus-Gunn pupil. It is the characteristic of optic neuritis. RAPD type of pupillary defect or Marcus-Gunn pupil is pathognomic of optic neuritis. If you record the visual evoked potential, it will show prolonged latency. So mainly PG students will read details about VEP, what are the different parts of a normal VEP graph and what do we mean by prolonged latency. And they will read and tell next time. Where usually you just remember this, there is prolonged latency seen on visual evoked potential. Ophthalmoscopically, retrobulbar neuritis, we have repeatedly told disc normal. If lesion is near the lamina, some signs of papillitis. So normal disc can be a differential diagnosis of hysteria. Only differentiating feature will be RAP, pupil. Otherwise, normal disc with reduced vision. One more condition is hysterical or malingering patient. Distension of the veins and attenuation of the arteries. Atrophic changes follow, degeneration extends towards the brain and also towards the eye. Milder cases, pallor of the disc may be limited to the temporal side. So, this optic neuritis also ultimately is going to cause optic atrophy if the process is not halted in between. Or if there are recurrent attacks of optic neuritis, that will lead to post-neuritic type of optic atrophy. That is a late consequence of optic neuritis, similar to papilledema. How papilledema leads to post-papillitic optic atrophy, repeated optic neuritis will also lead to optic atrophy. That is the end result of both of the diseases. And the atrophy which results is known as secondary optic atrophy. You will see there are primary, secondary, consecutive. The atrophy which results following edema or papillitis is known as secondary optic atrophy. Papillitis, hyperemic and swollen disc swelling rarely exceeds 2 to 3 diopter, whereas a papilledema swelling exceeds more than that. With or without peripapillary flame shaped hemorrhages. Swelling and edema ensue and spread onto the retina, veins become tortuous, extensively distorted, exudates accumulate upon the disc. But another differentiating feature with papilledema is in papillitis you get fine vitreous opacities. So as there is inflammatory reaction, vitreous shows vitritis, inflammatory cells in the vitreous which are not seen with papilledema. So in papilledema, edema of the disc which is more, parallax will be more than 3 diopters, 5, 6, 7, 8 diopter. The forward protrusion of the disc is more with papilledema. Media will be clear in papilledema, no vitritis. Vision will be normal in papilledema and pupil will be normal in early papilledema. Whereas in papillitis, the forward bulging of the disc is never more than 3 diopter. Parallax is not more than 3 diopter. There will be pain. Pupil will be showing RAPD defect. Vision will be reduced and vitreous in front of the disc shows inflammatory cells in the vitreous which is known as vitritis. So if you try to see the disc in case of papillitis, hazy media will be seen. Media will be hazy because of the vitritis. This will not be the case with papilledema. These are the differentiating features between papilledema and papillitis. If the inflammation is mild, optic dysplasia may appear normal. If inflammation has become serious, it will lead to post-neuritic optic atrophy. So, ophthalmoscopically, how post-neuritic atrophy looks like? In atrophy, because of post-neuritic or post-papilledema, margins will be blurred. That is in contrast to primary optic atrophy, where margins will be sharp. Floor of the disc, where it has gone into post-neuritic atrophy, will show dirty grey color. Floor will be showing dirty grey color. It will be filled it with organized tissue, gliosis. Floor will be filled with disc floor in the center, will be filled with dirty grey colored organized tissue extending onto the constricted arteries as perivascular chain. Normally, you know, in the center of the disc there is curve. So this curve gets obscured or filled out because of the reactionary gliosis in case of post-neuritic or secondary optic atrophy. So how will you identify secondary atrophy? Pallor will be there, but margins will be blurred and cup will be obscured by the glial tissue, filled up cup. You will not be able to identify any cup in the post-neuritic optic atrophy, and the gliosis, whichever is filled the cup, will extend along the vessels in the form of sheathing. So vessels will have in their boundaries sheathing. This is nothing but a gliosis. These are the signs of post-neuritic optic atrophy. Ophthalmoscopically indistinguishable from early papilledema. Now we have already discussed the differentiating points between papilledema and papillitis, but I give you this as a homework. You enumerate all the differences between papilledema and optic neuritis next lecture. Differential diagnosis, it is mainly for the postgraduate students. How it differs from ischemic optic neuropathy, how it differentiates from anterior ischemic optic neuropathy, how it differentiates from posterior ischemic optic neuropathy, papilledema, grade 4 hypertensive retinopathy, Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy, toxic and metabolic optic neuropathy, compressive space occupying lesion in the orbit or intracranially. So PG students will work out on the all 8 differential diagnostic points and write down in 2, 3, 4 lines each condition and how it differs from papillitis. Now case of optic neuritis, what clinical workup will do? History taking, age of the patient, rapidity of the onset, occurrence of previous episode, presence of pain. Complete ophthalmoscopic examination, visual acuity, color, pupillary reaction, retinal exam. Visual field recording, recording of VEP for both eyes to find out confirm the diagnosis of optic neuritis. In case of atypical optic neuritis, what you will do? Complete blood count, C-reactive protein ESR, fluorescent troponemal antibody for syphilis, antinuclear antibody for conditions of metabolic. For the first episode and in every atypical case, MRI and brain and orbit is recommended. Why you will go for MRI? See, because you are not 100% sure many times whether it is papillitis or papilledema. Sometimes you may be sure. First thing is papilledema you will rule out, because papilledema may be life-threatening condition like intracranial space occupying lesion. So slightest doubt, when you do MRI brain, you are ruling out intracranial pathology. So if you rule out that, you can confirm the diagnosis of optic neuritis. That is first thing. Secondly, when you are doing MRI brain, again you are ruling out demyelinating disease. Most common life-threatening condition in a case of optic neuritis is demyelinating disease like multiple sclerosis, which involves the CNS. Now, if you do MRI brain, you will be seeing demyelinating patches in the brain or the optic nerve. if they are present when patient has first attack. If they are there, you confirm that it is a demyelinating disease of the CNS. Immediately you can consult neurophysician and do CSF tapping, other diagnostic workup for multiple sclerosis and start treatment of multiple sclerosis. That is why MRI is a must. It may happen sometimes that you have typical optic neuritis where no demyelination is found in the CNS. Still, it is better you rule out by doing MRI. Patients with demyelination of the CNS on MRI or abnormal should be referred to neurologist for evaluation and management of possible multiple sclerosis. Now treatment. Now I already told you that if you are not treating, patient has natural recovery. We are talking about typical optic neuritis. So natural recovery, patient vision goes down, lowest goes down in week, starts improving, within a year patient improves. If that is the case, why should you treat if naturally patient's vision is improving? The point here is, if you are not treating and patient may improve in the natural course, patient has a risk of recurrence. So patient may get recurrent attacks of optic neuritis, recurrent attacks of demyelination of the CNS, which can in the later course be life-threatening to the patient. That is why there was a study conducted which is known as Optic Neuritis Treatment Trial, ONTT, who has come out with certain guidelines. If you treat the case with optic neuritis treatment, ONTT trial, based on that if you treat, it is observed that the rate of recurrence comes down. Patient improves, vision improves, symptoms improves, and rate of recurrence and relapse comes down if you treat with the protocol of ONTT. That is why you must treat every case of optic neuritis, typical optic neuritis. Now if it is atypical, you have to treat the primary cause. If it is syphilis, if it is TB causing this, you will have to treat the primary cause, and under that you will give steroids. But in case of typical cases, it is observed that which are idiopathic or demyelination known to recover spontaneously with restoration including field, etc. So guidelines are ONTT. It is said that intravenous methylprednisolone IVMP in a dose of 250 mg IV slowly over 30 to 60 minutes, 6 hourly per 3 days. So 6 hourly 250 mg IV methylprednisolone for first 3 days, followed by oral prednisolone 1 mg per kg per day for 11 days. Prednisolone is rapidly tapered off over the next 3 days. So it is a 14-day treatment, 3 days IV methylprednisolone, 11 days 1 gram per kg oral prednisolone, which is tapered within the next 3 days. That is the ONTT protocol. If the patient has already been diagnosed to have multiple sclerosis or has suffered from prior episodes of optic neuritis, observation is the rule unless faster visual recovery is specifically required.